Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Rules Administration Procedures Committee for September 1st. The time now is 3:28, and I'd like to apologize to the community. Zoom has been having some problems on their end, which forced us to pretty much abandon using Facebook Live because we couldn't utilize that as we would normally. So what we have done is we're using YouTube. And if you go to Facebook, I believe there's a link there that will take you to YouTube so you can see the live presentation of this. So our subject matter experts, is that how that's working? I just want to verify that to make sure I didn't lead the public astray.
That's my understanding, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
assuming that's correct.
That's my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And at this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chairperson Carl Franco.
Here.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas.
Here.
Alderman Edward Bug.
Here.
Alderman Bill Donnell.
Here.
Alderman Patty Smith. Here. Thank you.
On June 26, 2020, the governor of Illinois issued a statewide disaster declaration related to public health concerns. As head of this body, I have determined that an in-person meeting or a meeting otherwise conducted in accordance with the Opens Meeting Act is neither practical nor prudent because of the disaster. This meeting will be conducted by internet teleconference without the physical presence of a quorum. Prior to the commencement of this meeting, all members of this body were verified and can see and hear one another. I further find that the physical presence of members of the public is not feasible at this meeting due to the disaster, and more specifically, the practical difficulties associated with accommodating the public in an accessible, hygienic location that allows for appropriate social distancing. Alternative arrangements have been made to allow the public to contemporaneously hear all discussion and roll call votes live on the city's official website, on Facebook, and via Zoom teleconference. Notice of these arrangements have been given in accordance with the Open Meeting Act. The public may address this body consistent with the rules previously adopted and recorded and is adapted by mayoral order. The meeting clerk of this body is physically present at our regular meeting location as those terms are defined by Resolution R20-124. All votes shall be conducted by roll call, and a verbatim record of this meeting shall be made and maintained in accordance with the Opens Meetings Act. Clerk, is there any people from the public wishing to speak?
No, sir.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from Tuesday, August 18th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Alderman Bug. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Yamas. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairperson Carl Franco.
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas.
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug.
Yes.
Alderman Bill Donnell.
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith. Yes. 5-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 20-0500, an ordinance repealing and amending various provisions of the Code of Ordinances, City of Aurora, pertaining to the Aurora Public Library.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this proposed ordinance is relatively simple. What it does is it repeals provisions of our city code that dealt with the former Aurora Public Library. As the committee will recall, late last year, following the very late last year, the Aurora Library Board voted to establish a separate taxing body, the Aurora Library District. Shortly thereafter, the city approved that, and the library board then was able to petition for the establishment of a district in the Circuit Court of Kane County. The process was delayed a little bit as a result of COVID, but effective July 1st, the library transferred from being a municipal public library to a library district, its own taxing body. Many of the provisions of our code still speak to the former relationship between the city and the library, none of which are appropriate anymore. So it's our recommendation that the changes identified in the ordinance be made to the city code to effectively remove those references from the city code in recognition of the district's independence.
Thank you, Mr. Veenstra. Does anybody from the committee have any questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Bug. No further comments? Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairperson Carl Franco.
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas.
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug.
Yes.
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith,
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 20-0523, a resolution appointing George Gutierrez to the Aurora Public Art Commission. Is there somebody speaking about that? Oh, so hi, Alex.
Good afternoon. I am here speaking on behalf of Jen Evans today. So we are looking to appoint George Gutierrez to the Aurora Public Art Commission. This would be his first time serving on a city board or commission, and he is a member of the 4th Ward. That's all I have, unless there's any questions from the committee.
Questions by any of the aldermen?
Mm-mm.
Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Yamas, a second by Alderman Smith. No further comments. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairperson Carl Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug,
Yes.
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith,
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Next is 20-0524, resolution appointing Londa Midgley to the Aurora Public Art Commission.
Yes, so Landa is a resident of the 6th Ward who actually previously served on the Public Art Commission for many years. She did step back a year or so ago, but has asked to continue serving. She was a great member before, so staff has asked that she be reappointed or be appointed again.
Okay. Do any of the aldermen have any questions? Alderman Bug.
Yeah, it's probably a typo, or maybe I don't know. Her zip code said 60596.
That is definitely a typo.
Okay.
So I'll correct that.
So
And-
in that light, and it's very helpful when we get the zip codes.
Mhm.
On this art commission, because it's been brought up in other recent meetings,
Yes.
do we have somewhat of a representation across the city for this board, or are they centralized around downtown, or kind of what is the makeup of our board?
So this particular board, and I'm gonna pull something up on my computer here while I'm talking, but this particular board has actually codified requirements in terms of representation. There has to be a teacher, someone with a financial background. Let's see, there's a few other things. So we have someone from the labor community, a representative of the media, an artist, an architect. So we have that layer in there. And I do want to say that we have fairly good ward representation, but I do just want to confirm that, Alderman Bug, and my spreadsheet is running very slowly, so I apologize.
So I guess, Alex, while you're looking at that,
Mhm.
our goal is obviously to geographically diversify too, if we can, right?
Always, yes.
Right, okay.
This is one of those boards that comes with that extra layer of qualifications and requirements that can make it a little bit trickier to find candidates. But the goal is always to have representation from the whole city here.
Okay.
Let me see. All right, so we do have some Far East Side. I would say this one is, we do have good ward representation on this one. We have the 6th Ward, 4th Ward, 5th Ward, 8th Ward, 10th Ward, and then the 6th again. So I do want to point out that Mr. Gutierrez is he is in the 4th Ward, but he is in the east side portion of the 4th Ward. If that answers, does that answer your question, Alderman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? We have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Bug. No further questions. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Carl Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug,
yes,
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. The next item is 20-0535, a resolution appointing Penelope A. Torres to the Aurora Human Relations Commission.
Yes, so the Human Relations Commission had 3 vacancies, and we have 2 nominations here before you today. Penelope would be again, first-time board appointee. She's a resident of the downtown and has become very engaged in a number of civic organizations throughout the city. So we're looking forward to hopefully having her on the Human Relations Commission.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, can we have a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Alderman Donnell. Alderman Bug, did you second that?
sure,
Okay. We have a second by Alderman Bug. No further questions. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Carl Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug,
yes,
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Next is 20-0536, a resolution appointing Ricky Rogers to the Aurora Human Relations Commission.
Yes, so Ricky Rogers, we are nominating him to the Human Relations Commission. He currently serves on the city's African American Heritage Advisory Board, and he is the chair of the Human Relations Commission has asked him to consider serving on the HRC due to his work in with youth in the community. The HRC is looking to do more outreach and have their name out there a little bit more, make sure people know that the HRC is there and what their purpose is. And they feel that having a connection to someone that works with youth in the city of Aurora would be a benefit. So Mr. Rogers has been represented for that purpose.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee? Here, Alderman Yamas?
Do you say that he currently works with youth,
He does.
or he did in the past?
No, he does. He is currently a member of the city's African American Heritage Advisory Board, and then he also works with youth. That's what he does. He has I think he's the head of the African American Men of Unity organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
he
Thanks.
works for Aurora Township.
Yes.
Right.
Does he still work at Aurora Township? I see his resume says through February 2020.
I believe due to our current pandemic, they had some, I'd say layoffs, but they cut back on some
Okay, yeah.
things.
That makes sense. All right, I was just curious. That's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Motion
Any
to,
other questions from the committee? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
motion to,
Okay, do we have, that was Alderman Bog made the motion. Did Alderman Smith second the motion?
sure.
All right, Alderman Bug made the motion, Alderman Smith seconded the motion. Any further comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Carl Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug,
Yes,
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Next item up is 20-0473, which is discussion of Planning and Zoning Commission composition.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ed Sieben, Zoning and Planning Director. We wanted to bring this item up just for discussion today. As you know, a few months ago, the City Council combined both the Zoning Board of Appeals with the Planning Commission to create the Planning and Zoning Commission. At that time, there was also a change to the makeup of the Planning and Zoning Commission to add an additional representative from School District 308, if you recall.
Can you see my screen by any chance? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
yes, thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
And just let me give you a little background historically. Historically, a planning commission, or in this case, a planning and zoning commission, provides citizen review and recommendations on planning and development related matters to the city council. In Aurora, the early commission composition was organized so that all members represented the general public or at-large citizens of the city. The Aurora Planning Commission was originally created back in 1952 and started with 9 members. It went through varying iterations until 1978, when it really has been in the current state since that date. In 1978, the Planning Commission was amended to have 13 members. That would be 12 members plus a chairman, so a total of 13. Also in 1978, they amended the composition of the Planning Commission so that there would be designated 6 taxing body representatives from Aurora Township, School District 129, School District 131, School District 204, the Fox Valley Park District, and the Aurora Sanitary District, which is now called Fox Metro. The remaining 7 commissioners were to be at-large citizens from Aurora. And when this was done in 1978, Aurora had about 80,000 citizens, and it had only begun annexing to the east into DuPage County, and had not even gone down into Will and Kendall County yet. As I had stated just previously, a few months ago, the council did an amendment to combine the Planning and Zoning Commission and to add a representative from District 308. The one issue, though, that does create is now, out of the 13 total members, 7 of them will be representing a taxing district, and that leaves a minority, only 6 representatives on the commission that would be at-large citizens for Aurora. So because of that, and we are looking at different procedures, et cetera, we wanted to go over a few options of potential change of the composition to maybe help that imbalance and maybe look at what some other municipalities are doing. One option is on the screen here, would be to reduce the size of the commission to 9 members and have them all appointed at large. We did survey, you see a number of Chicago area communities, and the majority of them do have between either 7 or 9 members. It is rare that they do go above the 9. So, but staff would feel if we did go to this option, we feel 9 would be more appropriate than 7 because Aurora is a very large city. Also, no other community appears to designate seats for representatives of taxing bodies. So that would be one option. If we can go to the next option. Option 2 would be to maintain the current number of commissioners at 13, but just to adjust the composition to ensure that a majority of commissioners are appointed at large. This would require shifting at least 1 seat from a representative of a taxing body to a member appointed at large. There's also the possibility of leaving it at 13 and just having all at-large members. But if we did remove 1 taxing rep, it would go back to the previous 6 reps and then 7 at large. And then next to option 3, this one would be to increase the size of the commission by 2 members and go up to 15. And then the 2 additional members would be at-large appointees. By increasing the number of commissioners, this would ensure a majority of at-large members. While this would afford balance consistent with the original intent, a 15-member commission may be a little unwieldy based on the sheer number to physically seat in one setting, and assuring attendance for quorums and drawing sufficient interest. So this may not be ideal. And then the fourth option would really be to do nothing and just keep it where there are 7 reps of a taxing body and then the six citizen at large. So currently on the commission, there are 12 members. We do have 1 vacancy. We had a member that represented Aurora Township did resign back in March. So currently there is 1 vacancy, and that is the Aurora Township member. I don't know if there's any questions of me or Tracy or Alex or Rick Veenstra, if you had anything else to add.
Tracy or Rick, do you have anything else to add before we go to questions from the committee?
I
Not
don't.
at this time.
Okay, Alderman Smith, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, question, I think this is, am I on for you, Ed? What's the advantage or disadvantages of having the taxing body a part of this?
I think we were trying to get a more pointed representation from, for example, the school boards. As you know, we actually have more than 4 school boards in the city, but we only have 4 of them represented on the Planning Commission. I do indicate in the staff report that in recent years, the city has been engaging other taxing bodies within the development process, originally via the Planning Council and now via our DST or Development Service Team meetings. We also involve them in the permitting process and then other regularly scheduled update and coordination meetings. In fact, we've been doing regular school district meetings, I believe at least quarterly, with all the main school districts. And this does serve the purpose of keeping other taxing bodies appraised of recent or proposed developments. We did this, for example, with the Route 59 corridor plan. We did engage School District 204 and the Fox Valley Park District very heavily in that on the front end. That would be one example.
Carl?
I'm sorry, who, somebody had their hand up?
Can we,
Alderman
can we-
Donnell. Can we get off the screen now so I can see all the aldermen?
You sure can.
Thank you.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Sure.
There.
yeah, Carl, if I could just jump in. I sat on the Plan Commission for over 25 years, representing the Fox Valley Park District. And when I got onto the commission in the late 80s, our community was growing at an exponential rate. In fact, the Aurora Naperville corridor was one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. So at that point, it was very helpful to have representatives from school district and park district and others who were involved in the development process. And sometimes we had meetings once a week instead of twice a month. We had once a week, so it was very busy. And it was really for that reason, because I think the kind of the area that we have that still is ripe for development is in School District 308. So that's kind of why I supported having a representative from 308. I do know that we do have other ways to involve the other taxing districts now, but it was very helpful when things were really moving.
Thank you. Any of the Alderman Yamas?
Thank you. I do have a question with the different options that we were presented. With option 1, if we were to reduce the size to 9 members, how would that work procedurally? Would everyone kind of submit their name again for, I guess, consideration to the new board, or would we just axe off a few? How would we decide that?
So I've got the a list of the members in front of me, and then their expiration of their terms. We currently, as I said, we have 1 vacancy right now, and then we have 2 members that actually their term has expired, but the way the ordinance reads is they stay on unless they are reappointed or replaced. So we do have 2 members that terms have already expired. That is an at-large member and our School District 204 member. And then we have several several that are due to expire at the end of 2020, for example. So that's something that, could naturally occur really by the end of the year, if you were to go down to 9.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Alderman Bug.
Because of the future growth, well, this is just an aside, Mr. Sieben, you didn't want to go back to the 30-member board?
I didn't mention that one, but it was in the report. I could not believe that. 1953, we
Unbelievable.
had 30 members. Yes.
Yeah,
It was when we
I
had
like,
a form of government too, so.
Yeah.
Which probably
how would
was.
you like to be the chair of that committee, huh? But with our future growth, so not only do we have the room, of course, to grow in 308, the vast amount of land going south, but we all know that up north in Ward 1, that we have some plans to do some movement there, and that would be a whole nother school district that isn't right now represented. So, and maybe I'm talking against ourselves, but I think possibly, even some of the best representation would be for Oswego and Batavia, because that's really, at least the residential, well, Ward 1 have both possibly residential and commercial growth. So, there's a couple different ways to look at it.
And I may add, I think that when this was all done in 1978, those representatives were actually the representatives of the entire area. Now that we've expanded so much, the representatives are not everyone. There's not, all the townships aren't represented, all of the school districts aren't representing. So that was one of the reasons why we felt that maybe this is a good time not to have anybody now represented, especially since we are able to contact them, and we have other ways that we are in talks with them.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we were looking at is, how does somebody become a designee or a representative of the taxing body? Are they going to be somebody who could have been appointed as an at-large member, or is it going to be basically a delegate on behalf of the taxing body? What if that particular person the taxing body is suggesting isn't somebody who, for whatever reason, the mayor and city council doesn't feel is an appropriate member for the service on the Planning and Zoning Commission? So trying to work out that dynamic too was also something we were looking forward to, particularly with new appointees. You may have somebody who would be interested in representing part of the school districts, but if you don't have a large proportion of the school district, at least currently, in terms of residents within the corporate limits of the city, what do you do then?
Well, as I look at this, and actually I can comment on some of this, there's a sentence in the body of the ordinance, or the description of the ordinance, that says differences of opinion or interest sometimes exist between the city and the individual taxing districts over matters before the commission. So I look at that because I used to be on the Fox Valley Park District Board, and it was told to me that it would probably be more appropriate if I came off because of these potential conflicts. So I look at that and I say that could be something we're looking at here too. Who are you representing the best for the city, or are you representing the best for your particular entity that you're representing as a taxing district? So that's one thing. Based on what Ed Sieben said and what we know to be a fact is that we do have a number of firewalls to make sure that all these entities are heard. If there goes to Planning Commission, there's DST, and then there's the BZE for most of this stuff, and there's Committee of the Whole, the City Council. So there's a number of opportunities for us to get input from, as aldermen, basically, for the communities that we represent, whether it be part of the township or whether it be part of the school district or park district. So I think there's that too. So as I look at it, simplifying it, bringing it down to 9 without having somebody representing those taxing bodies, which may be somewhat archaic now, maybe there's not that need anymore, might be the easier way to go. And if we look at a 9-person commission rather, I guess our goal, I would hope our goal would be diversity geographically again, which would basically satisfy some of the things we're looking at. If you had 9 people, try to get people from 9 different wards, obviously, that would probably be the best way. And then maybe we could overlap with some of these concerns we have, because far west side is District 129, far east side is 204, things like that. So we can actually accommodate that, basically doing our job once the planning commission gets done and sends it to us and moves on. So I kind of like option 1 based on some of those, but if anybody else has any other comments, that's how I look at it. Mr. Alexander?
I just wanted to chime in quickly. So for the past 3 years plus, we have built in, with the school districts in particular, regular quarterly meetings to discuss ongoing economic development, planning and zoning issues that are occurring in their respective districts. That has been very well received. So that's in addition to the other elements that you talked about, Alderman, like the DST process. And so I feel like we have other mechanisms in place, and we're committed to them, that are working and lead to an exchange of ideas, an exchange of information, taking their temperature on different projects and keeping them informed throughout the entire process. So we've been very pleased, and I think the school districts the same way. And then, we have a long-standing relationship with the Fox Valley Park District, townships, and so we're constantly trying to build in those types of meeting requirements and opportunities, especially when it revolves around economic development projects.
Thank you. Alderman Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to kind of build upon what I hear. What we were actually doing back then, the schools and the park district, were negotiating park school sites. And a lot of interaction with the developer. So it was very handy to have that representation that would follow through on the planning commission. But I know that we have other ways to communicate now. And school district, 308 and Batavia School District, and the Fox Valley Park District should be included in those discussions. And but we had developers pushing pretty hard. It was all hands on deck back then. I'm not sure we have that situation now. I know we have lands to develop, but I don't know that the speed or the pressure is what it used to be.
And I guess I can speak for that. I mean, I know that like when we have developments come through, we do talk to the Fox Valley Park District immediately and get their input. I know we did that with Gramercy, that just recently went through last year, I believe, that we sat down with the Park District, made sure that they were, aware of what was going on with the townhouse development, as well as, we sat there and worked with them on the park site. So it does, we continue to have these conversations with the Fox Valley Park District. 204 is another perfect example. When we were doing the comp plan for the Route 59 corridor, we did have 204, meetings with them, actually probably multiple meetings with them to keep them informed of what was happening. We had the open house, which we had, invited them to and everything. So they were, well aware of everything that was going on. And I think that that would continue on as we move forward.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other comments from any of the aldermen? So I guess my question is now maybe for Mr. Vinstra, is this, because it's discussion only, is this something that stays at the RAP committee and ultimately we will decide, assuming this discussion goes on to next meeting, does it subsequently go on to COW, or is it one of those start and stops right here?
If this were to be something that was perfected into a proposed change in the ordinance, it would start here. This is the preliminary discussion. So if there was a sense of consensus that this is what you would like us to draft to begin the conversation, then we could start doing that. But that initial draft would come to the RAP committee before it would go elsewhere.
So are you looking for us to narrow it down to the options today? Is that something that's our goal, to get it down to that prior to COW?
Well, prior to us coming back to RAP with the proposed amendment. So
Okay.
if I'm hearing a preference towards one of the particular models, then that can be what we draft. If there's an alternative that you'd like to see instead, we can look at doing that too.
Okay. Alderman Denell, I saw your hand up.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm just addressing maybe the planning staff. Have we done any outreach to the taxing bodies, the park districts, school districts, on what you're proposing?
No, Alderman, we have not done that yet.
I think they might see the merit in what we're talking about as maybe having a smaller group and maybe not having direct representation. But I think after all these years, we maybe owe it to them to reach out before we move this forward.
Alderman Donnell, if I could, we had that discussion and we didn't want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. We wanted to get feedback from the city council as to the direction they wanted to take, but those are obviously conversations that do have to happen. But we were looking for feedback from this committee before we reached out to anyone, since we didn't know what the direction would be from the committee.
Alderman Yamas.
I think if we gave them, kind of a heads up that we were even looking at this possibility, that's more than enough. I don't want their feedback on what they think about this commission and how we're running our own city, especially if there's we didn't call it a conflict, but whatever word we use. I don't want to mix or kind of blend the different governmental entities or taxing bodies here.
Alderman Smith.
So I tend to lean to option one as well, and I can speak from the experience of the Route 59 corridor and District 204 and how well that was set up by the city and how well the city did to inform the district about what was going on in the development process. So if there's that much time and energy put into our school districts when we're doing that type of thing, I don't see the harm of removing the taxing bodies and going to just aldermen, or not aldermen, just at-large members. Because if we're going to continue to grow, we're going to have to continue to add taxing bodies. So if we have, we don't even have all of our school districts on there. So if we're talking about what's fair, we really would need to make this bigger to add more taxing bodies to it. I think we do better, to Emmanuel's point with removing the taxing bodies and making it more of a residential type at large. So the option one would be my preference of choice. And this was written very well. Whoever wrote this up, it was very easy to understand and it was a good job.
Can I ask a question real quick? We're talking about the taxing bodies. When we are filling a position and we need a park district person or a school district person, do we go to that entity and say, give us one? Is that what we do?
So I can speak to that, Alderman. It's been a bit mixed. In some cases, we would go directly to the organization and ask for a representative. There would be times when they would decline to provide someone. In the case of a school district, for example, we would then find a resident who lived within the boundaries of that district. And hopefully there would be some sort of connection with the school, and then we would appoint that person. So both is ultimately the answer.
And I kind of asked that because it appears their expectation is not to necessarily have a representative. They've declined us. And the other thing I want to mention too is that we have to understand they are a recommendation type of body. They're, they recommend to us. We still have, when it comes to committee, standing committee, COW, whatever, we still have the deciding vote. We actually vote on that. So as I said before, I'm leaning towards one, but even more so now when they're not that engaged and saying, you got to have a park district person, you got to have a school district person. If some of them aren't really that engaged, then maybe it's not that important for them to have a representative. Otherwise, I'd say they should always be engaged, but apparently it's not consistent.
That, Mr. Chairman, that is accurate. We have right now the taxing body members. It's a combination of current employees, current board member, former board member, former employees. They're retired.
Right.
So there's not a real close link on all these.
Right. Okay. So if, no, oops, sorry. If nobody else has any other comments, are you looking for us to maybe narrow it down for Ed and Tracy to go forward to present something at the next RAP committee? Well, having heard from Alderman Smith, having heard from Alderman Yamas and myself, I think we are leaning towards one. Alderman Donnell, you want to give us your input, and then Alderman Bug will go to you.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is just being sentimental for the old days, but I like option 2 as well. Kind of keeps, half of it in there. It would just work really well. And I didn't remember that much conflict, but it really created a partnership between the city and the taxing districts, which again, in a time of really rapid development, it worked well. So I'm going to speak up for option 2, maybe keep that on there as well, if we can moving forward.
And Alderman Bug?
Yeah, I see Alex took a little break. If she comes back with my magic wand, there she is. So I guess the one commission that we really pinpoint on having someone from kind of each area's CDBG. Of course, now we're looking at 9 committee members. Of course, we have 10 wards, so that doesn't mesh necessarily. But I think it would be imperative if we went route number 1, that, I mean, it would have to be representative of the whole city. It's not nothing to talk down about our Fair Art Commission over there, but if you don't have a great spread out representation of the Art Commission, maybe you can kind of slide along. If you don't have a good representation of Planning and Zoning Commission, you have 4 people from one ward and nobody from a whole side of the city.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work. So I think we have to pay very close attention, and maybe even write in that we can't have more than, I don't think you could say 2, but certainly you couldn't have 3 people from the same ward on the commission, but something like that, some type of parameters where we don't have 3 people from the Fair Ward 5 out there on the west side, and nobody representing Mr. Donnell.
Yes, agreed, Alderman Bug. And historically, the 4th and 5th wards were the majority of our boards and commissions, and it's been, staff has put a lot of time and energy in working and recruiting people from other wards. I agree with you. I think it would be beneficial to actually put language in the ordinance if we were to go with 9, limiting the number of representatives from any one ward. So we avoid that with this commission specifically. I agree with that.
Thank you.
I make a suggestion that after hearing everything, and let me know if I'm off base here, I would recommend that we bring this back with option 1 and 2 as potentials only, with the caveat, and you guys can look at the wording about the number of people only per ward, so we get that geographic diversity, which I think is important since we're not going to have representatives from these various entities. And then we could probably at the next meeting whittle it down from there, just the one option, and see what caveats with geographic diversity we want to throw in there. That would probably help us finalize at the next meeting. Does anybody have a problem with going forward with that summation?
I think that's a good way to do it. We are in the process of doing some procedural changes with our zoning ordinance, and those provisions and those changes would very likely be in the same chapter that the composition of the Planning and Zoning Commission is currently set forth in. So it would be staff's desire to probably bring those as one package at that point. It's really more of a moving of procedures and some adjustments out of the zoning ordinance into the remainder of the code. But it would probably be easier to do that in one swoop if the committees are amenable to that. Whether or not we could get that to you in 2 weeks may depend. That will be our goal, but we certainly can build in potentially option 1 with the caveats as far as the geographic diversity, and then prepare what we would refer to as the Donnell alternative that would have the option 2 built in if that's the direction we wanted to go. If we did go option 2, was the preference for the taxing body that would no longer be represented, or the taxing bodies that would no longer be represented per se on the commission.
Well, that would have to be up to Alderman Donnell, and I think he would tell that taxing body personally, not in.
Well, yeah, that's a tough one. Obviously, from my experience, it was the park districts and the school districts that worked as closely as we did. We're always going to work with Fox Metro. We're always going to work with the township, although the township was very good to have when we had our assessor on, could talk about, property values and in the actions we're doing. So for me, I guess the schools and the park district would be probably the primary ones.
Mr. Alexander, go ahead. Muted.
May I just quickly suggest that perhaps in addition and with a nod to the Donnell alternative, that perhaps staff come back with some language to actually codify the successful requirement that we've put in ourselves, where we're meeting with school districts and other taxing bodies, so that that's built in as well, so that we guarantee that while they may not be under option one physically on, that they still will have required contact and meeting with the staff accordingly. Just a thought.
That's a good thought. Staff, Tracy and Ed, okay.
Yeah, we can work on that.
All
Sure.
right, good. So I think we've narrowed it down, whittled it down to 1 and 2 with some caveats there. And staff, if you want to put that together for us, whether it be the next meeting or the meeting after, that's fine. Whenever you can get to us, I think we'll be prepared to take a look at it again and
Okay.
come to some kind of
We will work
resolution.
with Mr. Veenstra and Alex Voigt on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe it will be not next meeting, but the following meeting. Our processes have to go to our planning and zoning commission again, which won't be happening for another 2 weeks. So then we'll bring it all together back to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep, thank you.
All right, I believe we're done with this discussion. Let's go on to the final item, which is 20-0533, discussion regarding residency for City of Aurora employees. And who is going to take the lead on that? I see Mr. Murphy's here, so thank you,
Yeah,
John.
I'm happy to kick it off. Alicia Lewis, our Human Resources Director, is also on. John Murphy is a partner at the law firm of Odelson, Stirk, Murphy, Frazier, and McGrath. John has been one of our outside legal counsel for the City of Aurora since 2000. He has successfully handled a number of complex cases on behalf of the city. For today's discussion, he is here as our police outside counsel and longtime legal representative, assisting both myself, past corporation counsels, including Mr. Veenstra, and now Alicia Lewis, with issues such as collective bargaining, contract interpretation, disciplinary actions, as well as grievance and arbitration counsel. So we have prepared, again, after speaking to Chairman Franco and others, to begin the conversation and perhaps answer some questions and provide some clarification about the issue of residency for city employees. So I'd like to turn it over to John at this time to go through the presentation.
Thank you very much, Alec, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this initial information session. And I think it's a great idea that this is done in open session as opposed to going into closed session to discuss collective bargaining, which we could have done, but this is an important public topic. What we'd like to do is walk through the PowerPoint that we prepared to kind of introduce not simply the committee probably knows a lot of this, but also to introduce members of the public to this concept of residency, meaning requiring newly hired employees to move into the city within a period of time. So everybody can see the smaller PowerPoint on the upper right?
Yes.
Good. Let's start with the basics. We've got two categories of employees in the city, non-union and union. The rules of the road for non-union employees are very simple. The council has total discretion to establish residency requirement for non-union employees. It's a matter of council policy, not a matter of bargaining. So it's a unilateral decision that the council has the right to make, balancing various factors. On the other hand, the great majority of our employees, as is the case with virtually all public employers in Illinois now, are union employees. A public employer like Aurora has an obligation to bargain with unions over wages, benefits, and terms and conditions of employment. Residency requirements, meaning you have to move in and you can't move out, are a significant terms and conditions of employment. So initial answer on the issue of residency, council policy as to non-union employees, duty to bargain as to all of our unionized employees. And if the council committee members have any questions along the path, feel free to do so while we're moving through the path. Within the concept of unionized employees, we've got two categories. Category number one are the civilian employees, clerical, public works, electricians, the employees represented primarily by AFSCME. The law provides a specific impasse procedure for civilian employees. And that provision is from the labor side. If we reach impasse, can't go any farther in negotiations, theoretically, civilian employees have the right to strike. On the management side, we if we're at impasse, it's never really happened, but we have the right, if we reach true impasse, to impose our what's called our last best offer. So civilian employees, their weapon is right to strike. For management, when we reach impasse, we have the right to impose and implement terms of a collective bargaining agreement, including a potential term regarding residency for new hires. Not so for police and fire, what are called the public safety employees. Because of their importance to the operation of city government, the law prohibits police and fire from going out on strike. The alternative to strike for police and fire employees is binding arbitration, meaning that if we reach impasse, the parties hire or select an arbitrator, submit competing proposals to the arbitrator, and the arbitrator makes a decision as to which of the two offers are the best. We'll continue on that in a minute, but kind of the ironic thing is that as between the two systems, the binding arbitration system gives a lot more power as a practical matter to the public employees than the right to strike, because walking out on a job is a very difficult thing. Employees have families to feed, and it's not really an attractive option to anybody. But with police and fire, they have the right, and both sides have the right to take a dispute to binding arbitration. Those of you who've been on the council for a period of time may recall that it took Alex and I probably 2 or 3 rounds of negotiations with APO to effect a change in arbitration where employees moved from paying health insurance based on a percentage of their salary to a percentage of the premium. We were able to prove after 2 or 3 attempts that the percentage of salary was irrational because the rate of insurance increase rose faster than the wage rate. And so as the years went by, the employees were paying less as a percentage of salary. So it took a long time to win that arbitration. That arbitration then moved through the employee structure, and we were able, that's been able to save the city a significant amount of money in all of our employee groups. The point for this presentation is bargaining takes time, and if you are at impasse with a union, with a public safety union, arbitration is the only way to do that. Now let's turn to the specific issue of residency for new hires. And for this discussion, let me focus primarily on police and fire, if I may. So looking at what we've identified as scenario background, let's assume that we submit a proposal that all newly hired policemen and firemen must become residents of the city within a specified date. The parties reach impasse on this issue and maybe other issues too, wages, health insurance, and the like. At that point, we would submit the matter to binding arbitration. Please focus in particular on the third bullet point and the term breakthrough. Arbitrators' jobs are to try to reach a decision that the parties would reach themselves. If there's a case of a proposal by either side that amounts to what the arbitrators call a breakthrough, meaning a significant change in the bargaining relationship, there is a very heavy burden imposed on the party seeking the breakthrough. So in our case, we would have particular challenges overcoming or to establish this kind of a breakthrough and have an arbitrator rule in the city's favor on the issue of residency. Let's walk through what might be some of the hurdles. And these hurdles are based most recently in arbitration involving the city of Springfield a few years ago, where Springfield tried to obtain a breakthrough on residency for newly hired police officers. The arbitrator ruled against the city on the issue of new hire residency for several reasons. The first, arbitrators are not inclined to erect what are called two-tier systems. By that, I mean one system for employees who are incumbent employees and a second system for newly hired employees. During the 2017 round of bargaining, we were able to reach agreement with APO regarding a two-tier wage structure for the police employees, which helped us taper down increases and resulted in smoothing heavy increases out. But that was done through agreement. Arbitrators are very hesitant to impose two-tier systems, and traditionally unions hate two-tier systems. Why? Because eventually the tier 2 employees, who generally have a lesser set of either wages or benefits, eventually become the majority of the union, and they're not happy with what was done by the two-tier system. So it creates potentially pressure within the bargaining unit, which sometimes causes unions to resist that. Because we're dealing in breakthrough, we would have to show a couple of things. First, that we've attempted to bargain this new system in. And the way you bargain a new system is by offering things, offering something that the union might want, and that would be reasonable for the union to accept. And we would have to show that the union, over a period of time, unreasonably refused to accept that. That's why it took us 2 or 3 rounds of bargaining to get the health insurance moved to where we wanted it to go. The other aspect of breakthrough, does everybody have the screen, or we've lost some of it? The other aspect of achieving a breakthrough in arbitration is that we would have to show that there is something wrong with the current system. And something wrong with the current system, meaning that the current system of no residency requirement somehow impairs government operations, is bad public policy and the like, that would show somehow the system is failing. So you can see there are challenges. And that's not to say that what is proposed would be impossible. It is certainly possible to obtain residency by way of traditional bargaining. The city of Joliet did that. I think we need a breakthrough on the PowerPoint here. The city of Joliet had residency for many years, dropped it for a couple decades, and Joliet was able to bargain it into their police contract in 2017. If you look at the other communities table, the Joliet was able to do it. I've got their contract. I don't know what the give and take was that resulted in the Joliet agreement, but it's doable in negotiations. But in an arbitration setting, it's an uphill battle. So we would have to bargain that in to get anything done. I would say in the near term, we'd have to bargain it in, and we'd have to figure out if there is something that the union would want of significance that might make our residency proposal attractive. Now, let's go to the second bullet point, which is more of a matter of policy for the council than strictly collective bargaining, give and take. And that's the issue of Aurora's competitive advantage. This is pre-COVID by 6 months. I was meeting with the police department management on a few issues related to police employees who were at the academy, and we were having some issues. And during the course of that conversation, our police brass indicated that Aurora has lost some employees to other departments, either at a pre-hiring stage or shortly after they've been hired, they go to another department. And that really stunned me, because I consider us to be the cream of the crop, very good starting wages, terrific opportunity for advancement. Police candidates now are shopping for other things. Maybe it's lifestyle, maybe it's just money, maybe it's communities where there's less action. But the issue of competition is something that the council would have to consider in terms of advancing residency. Will it be counterproductive going forward to obtaining top quality candidates? The other two bullet points are proving harm, which we've talked about, in a two-tier system may be challenging in bargaining. So those are the long-term issues with that. And if we can go to the next sheet, the next PowerPoint picture, please. The history of arbitration and residency has been primarily, almost exclusively, the unions seeking to expand a pre-existing residency requirement, either pre-contract or in early contracts. The Springfield case and the Joliet efforts are recent efforts where the communities have tried to bring employees in. Why have arbitrators been favorable to union efforts to expand or relax residency requirements? These are kind of my summaries of them. Expressways, that's obvious. Now people can get to work on time, even if they live a distance away. So the old days of we have to have police living 15, 20 minutes away in case we have to bring somebody in for overtime. It's not the case anymore. Related to that is the issue of mutual aid. If there ever is a significant problem, we have mutual aid agreements with neighboring departments. So that's another argument against the requirement that the police officers live close to the police station. Housing cost variables are obvious, and particularly it depends on income levels versus the housing stock at a particular time when people are looking to move in. Spousal work obligations is a factor that arbitrators have looked at. If a couple has one of the spouses works distant and they've made their housing choice already based on proximity to both jobs, a residency requirement may impair the spouse's work obligations. The final element is, freedom of choice. Most of us have the freedom, putting aside elected officials who have to live in town, most of us have the freedom to live where we want and make those choices as to driving to work far away or close away. So these are the kind of the things that the arbitrators balance, and there really isn't that much literature out in terms of tangible benefits to the employer. So these are all factors that we would need to discuss in greater detail, and the council in terms of giving direction to balance. But I think it's important for the council and for the citizens to understand that when we're dealing in a bilateral relationship with public employee unions who have significant bargaining power, we have to recognize that in the bargaining context, to get, you have to give. We prepared one final sheet on this in terms of incumbent employees, but I don't get the sense that the council is looking to impose or work towards residency requirements for people who've been working for the city 10, 15, 20 years. Tell me if we're wrong on that.
Well, I would say our initial discussion probably started with new hires only. I mean, that was how we originally started, so I'm probably more leaning that way.
Yeah. So we had so I think that completes our presentation. I know this was intended for information only, and we'll move forward to future meetings, but
John, there is one more slide.
well,
but
that relates to current employees.
Yeah, but before you leave the other communities, if I could just point out,
Yep.
these are municipalities that we are in police and fire arbitration. One of the factors is comparability. And so these are communities where on a number of different issues that go to arbitration, an arbitrator would look at what they are doing comparable to Aurora. So this lists Elgin, Evanston, Joliet, Naperville, Rockford, and you see whether or not they have a residency requirement, do they employ any incentives, and then the notes. And as you're familiar, we have codified for department heads, for example, must live in the city, including the police chief, the fire chief. We did that informally up until a few years ago when we made them part of our Article 2 council changed approved ordinance changes. So this next slide gives you the current snapshot, and let me just get the folks out of the way so I can see this, gives you the current snapshot of by employee group, out of a total of a little over 1,000, was at 1,036. We have about 37% living in Aurora total, and about 63% living outside of Aurora. And then you can go through and see, and we'll provide this to the RAP committee after the meeting as well. But this gives you kind of the high level summary by group. You see police and fire on here. You have, it's about 80-20 on fire, living outside. Police, it's about 78-22. Executive is about 50-50, etc. So wanted to just give you the current snapshot of where Aurora stands from a residency, actual residency perspective.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Did any of the committee members have any questions or comments based on what they've heard today, the presentation by Mr. Murphy? Alderman Yamas?
Thank you. I do have a question. I think it was, if we could pull up the second slide again. It was one that was talking about potential arbitration outcomes. And there was one bullet point that dealt with something about out of state.
Oh, yeah.
What can you touch on that again?
Yes,
If we can pull up that slide.
yeah, this provision is the third bullet point down on the screen, correct? What you're talking about?
There we go, that one.
The over the years, the Labor Relations Act has been amended primarily in efforts of unions to increase arbitrator flexibility to give awards that allow increased residency zones. One of the compromises that was made in the statute at the time was, okay, arbitrators can award an expanded residency zone, but you have to live in Illinois. So we could now you're not really close to either the Indiana border or the Wisconsin border, but you could by contract say there's no residency requirement at all, and employees can live in Indiana or Wisconsin. But as far as an arbitrator's authority, Alderman, an arbitrator can grant a union proposal to eliminate residency or expand residency, but an arbitrator cannot give police and fire employees the right to live in Indiana or Wisconsin.
Okay, that's very good to know. I did have one more question. I wish we could access the slides while we're doing this. I'll pass it on. If someone else has any questions, I'll come back to it.
I don't have the full screen. If anybody has a question, just chime in because I can't see everybody's hand right now because I'm not seeing everybody. Alderman Bogger, Alderman Smith, I don't see you, so I don't know if you have any questions.
Oh, I did remember my question. If I
Go
can
ahead, Alderman Yamas.
go back again.
Sure.
It was on one of the last couple of slides that compared us with neighboring municipalities. And I think was it Joliet? Said as of 2016, they have this residency requirement for 20 years. So, I mean, do we know anything about how they got to that point? Because it seems like we would have an uphill battle and we would, the burden would be on us. But just based off the slide, it looks like Joliet was able to enact that recently.
I haven't talked to their city attorney. I know him. So when you see a labor contract, this language about residency is new. But we don't know what took place at the bargaining table in terms of what the city had to trade, if anything, for the residency requirement. Now, Alderman, it could be something as simple as the city wanted it, and since the requirement didn't affect any of the incumbent bargaining unit members, it may not have been a big deal to the FOP. This is an FOP contract.
So
Yeah,
then
Alex.
we don't know if it went to arbitration then?
No, this was an agreement.
Okay.
This was agreed.
Okay, thank you.
But just to clarify, Alderman Yamas and everyone, John referred to earlier that there are some agreements where you must become a resident within a certain time after hire. So in Joliet, they give you within 18 months. And also the back end of that is once you have been a resident for 20 years, that's your cap, that's your limit. And then after that, you're free to move. I'm assuming, again, we'll find out more information, but I'm assuming that usually lines up with people retiring, being 50 or 55 or whatever tier they're in. But technically you can still, the way I read that, you can still be a city employee and once you're past 20 years, you can still stay on, but move.
Yes. If we can stay on the screen for a second, if I can follow up with Alderman Yamas on these 5 towns. These are, over the years, what we've established as Aurora's comparables. Comparables are important, particularly on economic issues, wages and health insurance. We've had a couple of arbitrations on the issue of wages and a couple arbitrations, as I mentioned, on health insurance. The arbitrator will see what's going on with the comparable communities. And so Alex, 15 years, these have been our comparables. So these are what an arbitrator would look at, not simply on a future residency issue, but on any economic or significant non-economic issue.
All right, thank you for that information.
All right, so does any other alderman have any comments before I kind of close this out? So I just want to remind everybody, and like I said, I can't see Alderman. If we can get off of this, so I make sure I don't miss Alderman Smith and Alderman Bog because I can't see them.
I just want to make sure I believe that it was said that we're going to get that PowerPoint sent to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so hearing that and kind of a time is a little bit of a factor because we have another meeting at 5. I just want to reiterate that there was a desire to look into this. There was a desire that came out of the change initiatives. I think there was a desire from some other community members, some elected officials in the past to research this, which we've been doing, which we've had. Alicia came in and spoke last week and John came and talked this week. So I guess my question going forward is, do we want to continue discussion at the next meeting? And what I would suggest then is I really wanted to make sure everybody was involved. So when I say everybody's involved, I really wouldn't mind listening to the fire union guy and the police union guy, Lee, and see what their perspective is on this, so we can see why people want it and maybe why they would be against it before we entertain, maybe even taking this negotiation. So does anybody from the committee have a problem if we invite them to the next one, the union reps, to see how, what their take on it would be going forward? Okay, hearing nobody's be against it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I would also add, in addition to that, Mr. Chairman, that it might be worthwhile to go back and we can provide information. The city had residency up until, I think, 1991. So it might be worthwhile to provide some historical perspective. I believe there are several aldermen still on who were on the council and who were involved in that, but I think it might be worthwhile to bring back, and I know Chuck Nelson has some good history on it as well from his years, although I think he came on a little after, but I think that might be worthwhile if you'd like us to provide that information.
I think that would be helpful. I think we want to hear from everybody, the good, the bad, what they saw, what they didn't see. So yes, I would certainly want to have as many opinions based on relevance, based on the historical perspective as we can. So I will talk to you about who might be the best fit for that going forward. In addition, I will try to get the union reps there, somebody from them, so they can give us an opinion on what they think from their perspective. I think that'd be good to have. Alderman Yamas?
If we are going to have someone kind of give us the historical context for this, would it be possible to have at least a written summary sent to us before the meeting, so we have time? So like right now, I see the PowerPoint, I think of a question, but if I didn't write it down, I can't go back and look at the PowerPoint. So that way I just have something in advance. I can take some notes and be ready with some questions.
Absolutely. We can get that to you in advance.
At least some bullet points, or,
bullets.
something simple.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
All right, that sounds good. Anybody else have any other comments on this particular topic? All right, John, thank you for coming. Alicia, thank you for being here. We'll probably need you in the future, so, be available if you can in the next meeting. With that being said, are there any other items to come before the committee today? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Alderman Yamas, and I believe I have a second by Alderman Donnell.
Correct.
Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairperson Carl Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Edward Bug,
Yes.
Alderman Bill Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Patty Smith,
Yes.
5-0.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for being patient today with the technical difficulties and such. See you in a few minutes.